It seems the Necrons have awoken some more intelligent protocols for their minions. Half the codex was just given the core keyword, and it means that there's now a whole load more synergy and combos in the codex, and lots more fun stuff that we can put together. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where today we're talking Necrons, and more specifically some of the very nice new combos that have shaken out from this new Games Workshop Balanced Data Slate update, where they gave a bunch of the armies that were perhaps struggling a little bit some fun and interesting new rules. In the video we'll talk about which Necrons gained core, go through most of the important core buffs in the Necron Codex and how they might be combined with these new powerful units, and then finish up with a couple of specific unit combos, putting some of the new options together for some very tough or hard-hitting guys. So here's the list of core units that came out on that balanced data slate. Newly acquiring the core keyword, we have Flayed Ones, the Canoptek Reanimator, Ophidian Destroyers, Locust Destroyers, Locust Heavy Destroyers, Scorpek Destroyers, Canoptek Wraiths, Canoptek Acanthrites, and Triarch Praetorians. I'd say that perhaps some of those are more important than others. For example, the Canoptek Reanimator isn't usually the sort of thing that you're going to want to buff. Certainly gaining core doesn't really hurt it, but I'd say it's far less important than some of these other meaty damage-dealing squads. I think the prior reason for not giving these units core was a bit of a lore reason really. Maybe declaring the Canoptek constructs more sort of beasts or tools under the Necron army. The Destroyers are probably quite hard to command and kind of a lore to themselves, just rampaging around killing things, and then the Flayed Ones don't really operate within the main Necron army and more sort of appear unbidden. Still though, I certainly don't think it's the worst idea to give these units core. It certainly opens up a whole bunch of fun combos, and Necrons really didn't have very many core units before that they could command. Previously it was literally just Warriors, Immortals, Lichguard and Tombblades, a really tiny amount of units within a codex that's got quite a decent model range. Perhaps the most notable ones that might have gained core but didn't were Scarab Swarms and Tomb Spiders. I can maybe see why they didn't. They're maybe a bit more Cyber Beast-like than some of the rest on here, but also maybe from a game balance perspective, Scarabs are already very decent just by themselves, and the Canoptek Spiders would have been the biggest and meatiest choices on the list, and might have caused some problems, say if they were being reanimated. Still though, with so many big powerful units here, it's going to be really interesting to see how we can get more out of them with the various core buffs from the Necron Codex. Let's go through them then, and take a look at what we've got. First up, perhaps the most obvious really big buff that comes to mind is the Technomancer, the 75-point HQ who's already kind of decent. He's the one who has the rights of reanimation, and then can either take a Canoptek Cloak to get some repairs on other Necron models, or perhaps take a Canoptek Control Node for +1 to hit for nearby Canoptek critters. It was already pretty nice to have him regenerate a few Necrons to the field each turn, say a Lichguard or D3 Necron Warriors, but now with these really big chunky units that he can buff, he can be restoring some seriously potent models to the field once they've fallen. The most points intensive ones on this new core list are the Locust Heavy Destroyers and the Locust Destroyers. That means if you do have a fairly decent sized squad of them and the squad is injured but not killed, he could potentially be regenerating a big 60-point model every turn. It means that if your opponent doesn't manage to wipe the entire squad, he could easily pay for himself within just 2 turns of doing that. Perhaps other good targets could be the Canoptek Wraiths for 35 points each, or Scorpek Destroyers. All the while he can still be healing things with that Canoptek Cloak, or he maybe could trade it out for the Control Node if he's buffing Wraiths, +1 to hit, and then setting up one more of them each turn with their Invul save intact. Seems like it could make an already quite annoying unit to shift even more problematic. I think this guy's certainly one of the biggest winners of the new update. I wouldn't at all be surprised to see some people swapping out some Chronomancers for Technomancers, depending on what units they're working with. Otherwise, plenty of the other HQs issue core buffs. None are really more powerful than the Silent King though, giving 1 unit rerolls to hit at range and 1 rerolls to wound in melee. The melee one could be particularly brutal on plenty of the choices here. The Wraiths, the Flayed Ones, and the Scorpek and Ophidian Destroyers will all thank you for that, and also for his Obsiescence generators being nearby to make enemies fight last. I think the Overlord's going to feel a lot more helpful to have at the centre of a force now. My Will Be Done could certainly be potent on any of the big hard-hitting units, Locust Heavy Destroyers, Wraiths or Scorpek Destroyers in particular. Relentless March will be nice to start next to turn 1, gives them all an extra inch of movement for at least the first turn, and the rerolls to hit of 1 for the Standard Lord could be good with some of these, though it's worthless on the Destroyers as they get it anyway. The Royal Warden could have an extra bit of flexibility for fallback and shoot with the Locust Heavy Destroyers. Maybe getting tagged isn't necessarily their biggest issue compared with just getting shot down, but it could certainly give you a bit more insurance. and I think that a particularly new interesting one is Angrakir the Traveller. As well as the standard Overlord things, he also gives +1 to attack for a core unit, and that core unit could easily be Scorpec Destroyers or Flayed ones. Next up, here's just a few other rules that also affect core units. The Veil of Darkness is the relic that's in virtually every single Necron competitive list, usually to teleport some warriors around, though I guess you could trade out that Gauss Flare goodness for some Scorpec Destroyers or Flayed ones. I think if you are jumping the melee heavy hitters around, you always are going to be doing a bit of a gamble. I believe the most reliable charge that you can get out of Necrons is an 8-inch with Novok, and then re-roll it somehow, either with a CP re-roll or the Warlord trait Implacable Conqueror. That's the next one that I had on the list. That'll also be nice for these melee units too. It could be really powerful in the right game to have a first turn charge with either Scorpex or Flayed ones. Maybe in some games it might be worth it. I do have a feeling that quite a lot of people just want to stick with the Gas Flare warriors though. At least they're not reliant on making a 2/3 chance charge, and will just be able to happily light up the enemy anyway. The next good one is the Cryptek Arcana, the Hypermaterial Ablator. That's the one where you select a unit to give light cover to. I think it's already pretty decent on Necron warriors. Seems like it could be quite nice on things like the Locust Heavies or the Scorpec Destroyers, or maybe Flayed ones as well. In particular, it did occur to me that Scorpec Destroyers with a 2+ armor save and -1 to wound from their stratagem will be ridiculously tough to shift, as we'll see in just a second. Another really good general purpose one that should come into its own is Disruption Fields. That's the 1 command point stratagem that allows Necrons to get +1 strength in the fight phase. Really good that you can just flex into that if you need more damage. It's going to be particularly handy anytime that you go from wounding on a 5+ to a 4+, or a 4+ to a 3+. It'll be great for Scorpec or Ophidian Destroyers against the right targets, but I think it could be particularly interesting on big units of Flayed ones. Going from strength 4 to strength 5 is a really big deal against a lot of targets. Finally, if you are bringing a Night Scythe along, then the Prismatic Dimensional Breach could also be interesting. You do need to put a unit in strategic reserve for it to work, but then that unit can pop out of the Night Scythe on turn 2, anywhere up to 3 inches away from the enemy, basically guaranteeing them pretty much an auto charge from reserve. So as far as I can tell, they're some of the most interesting core buffs that you can put on Necron units, though if you do spot anything else, please let me know. I certainly might have missed some interesting stuff. I thought we'd just round up with a couple of simple combos, maybe a durability combo for the Scorpec Destroyers, and a damage combo for the Flayed ones. First up with the Scorpex though, here we have a unit of 5 of them with a Technomancer with a Hypermaterial Ablator, to advance with them up the board and hopefully keep them safe and deliver them to combat. The Ablator will give them a 2+ armor save, and when they start to get shot they could pop Whirling Onslaught for a -1 to wound, giving them some pretty interesting durability numbers. With those stats, they're all but immune to small arms fire, it taking an average of 270 bolt rifle hits to down the unit, as they're all going to be wounding on 6s. Heavy bolters are almost equally silly. You only really get any sort of efficiency against the unit when you're shooting at them with las cannons or dark lances, but even then they're only going to be wounding you on 4s, and you'll still get a small save against both. I'd bear in mind that these are hits not shots as well, so in reality you'd have to be firing quite a large amount of an army at them to actually bring them down. And I haven't even accounted for the slim chance of some models reanimating by themselves. Really though, what will be most fun is when the squad is injured but not destroyed. The Technomancer's Canoptic Cloak plus the Living Metal should heal any injured ones, and then each turn the Technomancer can heal one from the dead, ideally setting up that model towards the front of the unit to make any charges that they're about to make shorter. To me that seems like a fairly terrifying brick of a unit, and one that doesn't really cost all that many points to run. On the flip side, I thought it might be interesting to see how big damage output we could get on some units now. So here's a unit of 20 Novox Flayed ones that have decided to walk into battle alongside Angrakir the Traveller. Now their core, Angrakir can give them +1 move, +1 to hit from My Will Be Done, and also +1 attack in melee. When they get to charge, which they'll get a +1 to charge from Novok, that'll give them an extra AP -1 from the Novok benefit, and then you can spend a couple of command points for the Novok extra attack, Disintegration Fields for +1 strength, and if you're lucky you might even be in the Protocol of the Hungry Void, which would give you yet more buffs. Assuming you're not though, then this 260 point unit will put out a casual 100 attacks at strength 5 AP -2, all of these hitting on 2s, and every roll of a 6 that targets a non-vehicle unit will get an extra hit as well. That is a serious amount of blending power. I know it's pretty unlikely that you deliver the entire unit into melee range in one fell swoop, but the theoretical maximum is up to around 67 dead guardsmen, 22 dead normal-sized space marines, 11 dead Gravis Marines, or around 20 wounds to a toughness 7 or 8 vehicle. That's pretty apocalyptic damage for a unit that is at least fairly durable. I guess the main issue might be delivering them there, as they are quite slow if they aren't making use of their deep strike. I suppose you could Veil of Darkness them if they're feeling brave, though you'd have to do that with a regular Overlord, not Amrakir. I think just going up to Strength 5 is really quite potent though, and if by some miracle you don't quite blend whatever you've got your hands on, remember Flayed Ones also have a stratagem for 2 CP, so they can fight again if necessary. So overall, I think this really is quite a decent buff to the Necron Codex. There's really quite a lot of cool combos to get your teeth into. It's going to be interesting to see what other Necron lists do emerge out of this, and if there's any other combos that become staples, alongside things like Necron Warriors being Veiled of Darkness around the board with Gauss Reapers. Let me know if there's anything in particular that you're looking forward to trying out, or any other killer combos I might have missed. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular videos coming, hopefully with a fair bit more for the Necrons. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description below. Making all these videos does take a fair amount of time, and if you are enjoying regularly, then any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.